There was nothing Cal Quantrill could say to make him stay. Nothing he could say to the Guardians to allow him to stay. Instead, he's going home. Well, he's going somewhere else on Guardians' 40-man roster decision day. Famous last words for Cal Quantrill.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself with the purchase of a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics to treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's jasemedical.com. Going through the comments, catching up on those. Again, Bruce, there are not right-handed hitters. We had this on the show. I'm just going to throw this out to our everyday Bruce. I appreciate you being passionate. But when we made a list of guys who had 20 home runs, who were right-handed and outfielders the last 2 years, they were all all-stars. There is literally no one who comes on the cheap. Saying 20 or 30 doesn't matter. It's the same group of right-handed outfielders. So I feel like that's kind of one of the big things, as we'll talk about with the Quantrill news and people being like, why couldn't they get a power hitter for him? Well, because those don't grow on trees. That is, outside of ace pitching, there is nothing harder to find in baseball than power hitting. And 20 home runs is power hitting anymore. Like, can we be honest about this? How many people are still stuck in the 90s view of power? The days of juice are gone, my friends. Instead, it's the days of scuffing baseballs and guys throwing out 101.
And the balls are not juiced. They've gotten rid of the juice baseballs, although on some occasions you do get juice baseballs. If you're Aaron Judge, there was that whole debate last year during his home run chase. That's another story for another day. By the way, I wonder if any of my emo friends caught the opener. That was famous last. I would have played the song, but we would have gotten burned for copyright infringement. Yes. But it was Famous Last Words by My Chemical Romance, which was Cal Quantrill's warm-up music, which I always thought was very good and underrated. So that was my tribute to Cal Quantrill. I do love that song. I thought he had one of the most unique warm-up songs of baseball, because you get a lot of country and a lot of Latin. You don't get a lot of emo music in baseball. So I thought that was a lot of fun. But it is famous last words for Cal Quantrill. He's moving on to parts unknown of Major League Baseball. He'll pitch somewhere else next year. But obviously the shocking news of the day that he is sacrificed for the Guardians' 40-man roster decisions to add Daniel Espino and Cade Smith. I'll just get it out of the way that they added Smith and Espino and then got rid of Michael Kelly and Cal Quantrill. Of course, we have to get into why it was Cal Quantrill. And there had been like little bits of news and rumors out there suggesting that Cleveland could move him this offseason. I think the only one that was really credible that it came from was Robert. There were other places, but I guess we give him some credit for being on that. But Robert Murray was kind of the most credible source of saying that Cleveland could shop him. But really what this suggests to me, Jeff, is that they were actively trying to trade him before this deadline, and that they ended up designating him for assignment would also suggest that they could not find a deal, and maybe they still will. There's 7 days in the DFA process in the offseason. It's 10 during the regular season, I believe. Or did you?
I think it's just 7 in general now. It's now 7 automatically now.
Okay, so it's 7 automatically now. So they have 7 days to trade him or release him, or one of a million other things you can do if you DFA somebody. So they may still work out a trade with somebody for Cal Quantrill, but they're not going to get a whole lot of significant value for him at this point because they had the DFA, which suggests there wasn't a whole lot of offers out there.
It's buying time. Like, that's the one other thing. If you already know you're going to, here's the thing about a DFA. If you know you're going to trade him and you've had talks with people and you feel comfortable that you're going to trade him, this buys you 7 days to get it done. Like, they were maybe the last team to release the information. So I'm sure they were really working the lines again. This doesn't mean he's gone for nothing. And for all the people out there who are like, oh, terrible management of value. It's like, when has this team ever, listen, they ran Zach Plesac out again this year to see if there was any value. They let people wanted to cut Aaron Savale this time a year ago after his postseason, and they rebounded his value. Quantrill had a terrible year and rebound in September. They shopped him. They could be still in the process of shopping him. But if they don't get a trade, if this does end up being a straight release, then that means no team wanted him at $6.6 million, which either speaks to how much the economics of the game are going to shift with TV being completely up in the air, or it speaks to, listen, we all kind of knew that Cal Quantrill was that guy who overperformed versus his metrics. He is not a strikeout guy. That is not what teams love. That it is a profile that is a back-end starter, and teams might not view it as 6.6 being worth of that. So we'll see. I think there's still a chance for a trade. My bet at this point would be they work out a minor deal. I think this was a paper move more than a straight cutting. So I think something will come of it. But if I'm wrong, this front office never leaves money on the table. Like, if anything, they get accused of squeezing too hard, trying to get too much in every deal. So if they end up letting him go, it means that they couldn't get anything for him.
I won't be surprised either way if he gets traded or he doesn't, because the trade will probably it will lack a whole lot of value, or I should say it's not going to be a flashy return. I mean, people are probably going to be upset when they see what the return is if there is a trade, because it's not going to be, it might be, what do they get for Jake Bauers? They even get set of stubs who's already retired. Like, you might get a similar return for Cal. So I'm not expecting to be anything of significance. But I won't be surprised if there is no return either, because a lot of teams might look at this offseason and say, okay, is Cal Quantrill really worth, because his arbitration figure was what, 6.6 million? Yes. Right? That was the projection by Only Trade Rumors.
Yes.
If I'm another team and everyone needs pitching depth, obviously, and Cal is still one of those guys who can provide depth. It's not flashy, doesn't strike anybody out. But this is a guy who is arbitration eligible. He does have 2 years of control, but he's also a Super 2 guy. So he actually ends up with, I guess it doesn't matter now. It's 4 years arbitration. There's only 2 years left. So it's a year-to-year deal at this point with him. Yeah. But if I'm another team, I'm not sure I'm paying him, like, based on the economics of what's going to happen this offseason, because there's a lot of teams who are going to pull back spending based on the lack of TV deals out there, and Cleveland's going to be one of them. There's absolutely a financial component to this, and people are going to say, "Oh, Dolan's cheap," and it's hard to sit there and defend it, because on one hand, I could look at Cal Quantrill and say $6 million for the kind of depth he provides, and yeah, he was hurt this year, but the year before he was pretty darn reliable, and if he's healthy, he's a pretty good guy to count on every fifth day to continue depth. But given the economics right now, I may look at Cal Quantrill and say, okay, he's designated for assignment. I could trade something for him, even though it's minuscule, and then I have to go out and I have to, either exchange an arbitration figure with him, or I have to settle somewhere south of that 6.6, or you don't trade for him. You let him hit free agency. Nobody trades for him, and you negotiate him with him freely, and you say, I think you're worth, $3 or $4 million, instead of having to pay you $6 million, because everyone wants to pull back spending. Everybody's situation is going to be different. There's a lot of teams that aren't like the Mets. The Mets aren't going to care. They have Steve Cohen. If the Mets thought that Cal Quantrill was going to help them be better next year, they might give him $6.5 million or whatever it is to go out and throw 150 innings. That might be of value to them. But I won't be surprised if he doesn't get picked up, because I could see a team saying, I'll just let him hit free agency and we'll try to offer him 3 or 4 because we're cutting spending, and I don't want to pay this. I don't want to go to arbitration with this guy. I want to come in under the $6 million figure that I might have to come close to in arbitration.
Yeah. And when you look at, like, let's say someone like Kyle Gibson, who's another back end starter, like, he made $10 million last year, but we do think the belt tightening is coming. He was 10, he was 7.6, 9.6, 10, 8.1. That's the last few years. So I think the belt tightening is 100% occurring. I do think they will get something. I think my big takeaway is just wait. They always announce late. The number of people I saw getting anxious about this was ridiculous, because it's like, have you not paid attention to every single deadline? They're one of the last teams every single year. The Blue Jays are the other team that's super late. What's the tie in there? Same people have worked together. I saw the Blue Jays fans complaining how it's always late. But yeah, I mean, I had people come at me mad about that, but it's like, this is what happens. It takes a while. It was surprising they didn't make a trade yet, just because it felt like they had the last 2 years, last 3 years. So we'll see, but I do think a trade is coming. I honestly feel like being extra late as they were, even late for them, they were trying to get that across the finish line. It didn't happen. Since they couldn't get across the finish line, the only choice was the DFA or to then have to designate someone else for assignment. And I think they want to keep some of that roster fodder ready and waiting for when they, if they add Manzardo, if they go out and do add someone through trade.
Could very well happen.
I think we should come back from break, discuss the players, and discuss how this definitely affects the Shane Bieber situation.
It very much does.
Justin, we spend a lot of time together, you and I. We get fired up about tough wins and losses, who starts and who sits, and I'm thankful for the connection we have. And today I want this chat to be a little more personal. It's okay. You don't have to look away. Listen, we're having some fun with it. Here's the thing. As someone who uses medications, I'm going to go off script. The most annoying thing about medications are getting your refills and having to sit there and get a refill every month, get it filled. The rigmarole, the hassle of getting your medications filled is the most annoying thing about medications. So right now, one of the medications they've added in a year-long supply. You don't have to wait, not every month, not every 3 months, a year-long of ED medication. Doesn't matter what you use. If it's a generic for Cialis, Viagra, or Avado, they've got you covered. Right now, go online to Jase Medical and avoid the most annoying part of your prescription, which is getting it filled, and receive your 12-month supply and daily medication. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. So not only are you cutting out the hassle, but you're saving money. Multiple customers have talked about how it is nice to not have to deal with the supply chain, how it is nice to not have to deal with going to the pharmacy every month, and how that their prices are lower even before our discount. So if someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year supply of a daily med, go to jasemedical.com and see if they offer it. Remember to use our promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off their already fantastic prices. That's JASE Medical.com.
I shouldn't say very surprising, but it was surprising to see Quantrill DFA'd in this context, because they very easily could have designated Alfonso Rivas. Like I thought that was the most obvious thing is Rivas for Rivas. They would have had to create 2 spots anyway. Either way,
I thought the top 3 is pretty easy between Kelly, Rivas, and 99. Like to me, those 3 were the guys that I thought were the obvious choices. I never had Quantrill really in my sights, if I'm being honest. So take that as you will.
I didn't either. I mean, like I said, we kept seeing other people suggest they might,
because they don't have great depth, right?
Yeah, they don't. And this is the whole issue with Shane Bieber now, is that, there, like I said, there were rumors out there, or people were suggesting that the Guardians could shop Cal Quantrill. This might have been where it came from. And like you said, this buys them a little bit of time to make the deal, but there wasn't a whole lot of value to be had. But this directly impacts what you do with Shane Bieber now, because they don't have, even with Cal Quantrill, obviously the rotation situation is a little bit hard to figure out with the 7 guys they had. If you had, Bieber and Quantrill and McKenzie and the 3 rookies, you still had, a decent, I don't want to say surplus, but you had a strong foundation there. And without Quantrill, you have a little bit less now, but also you don't know if you can trade Shane Bieber. I don't want to say they're not going to trade Shane Bieber now, because who the heck knows what might happen, but it makes it a lot harder to figure out what they would do if they do trade Shane Bieber, because it depends on what you get back, I suppose. But almost certainly if you did, you would have to trade for some pitching depth, or you'd have to make another move to bring in pitching depth, which I wouldn't be surprised to see them do this offseason is trade for some pitching depth anyway.
And the one thing I'll say in free agency, I don't think they're going to spend much. But I won't be shocked if they do make a play on someone like Tyler Mahle or Frankie Montas, if they can get these guys on the cheap, and if those guys want to come to Cleveland and see their value. Like, listen, everyone knows Cleveland's good at development. That is their trump card. So if you are a pitcher that wants to recover from injury and maybe gain something, there is a world where they do add an injured arm, but then you can't count on an injured arm, much like the Zanina situation a year ago.
Right. That doesn't really help them with a whole lot of depth this year or any reliability. So it makes it hard to trade Shane Bieber now, because then if you trade Bieber, I don't think you're getting back in a rotation arm that helps you this year in that trade. No. I mean, I guess you could. If you do, you're getting someone who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, probably. at the same time, or not somebody who's going to make a great impact. So you'd be down to McKenzie, who again missed most of last season and has a checkered injury history in the minors. You would have, obviously, you'd have Tanner Bybee, Williams, and Allen, but they're rookies coming off their first year and second year. As good as we think those three rookies were, and have good futures, it's still a big risk to rely on them in year two to soak up 180 innings each. And then behind that, like those are your four. If you traded Bieber, who's your fifth? I mean, you don't have anybody in there. What, McKenzie has one 200 inning season under his belt. Then you have the three rookies, and then you're figuring out if Cody Morris, who again checkered injury history, Joey Cantillo, checkered injury history, and then everybody behind that, Espino's not going to be able to help.
One of those starters is going to get hurt. Like, let's just be honest. I'm not saying this like to be a doom and gloom guy, but just the general odds are that one of those starters is going to get hurt. That just happens. Like,
do you know how many people started a game last year for the Guardians? By the way, 14. Do you know how many people? 14 people. And that includes the watching Daniel Espino start games and the one weird Tuki Toussaint start. Like,
not Daniel
is very
Espino.
hard.
Espino was hurt he never was on the roster.
I said Tuki Toussaint.
You said Espino before that.
Okay.
Okay. Just so people doesn't get us in our comments.
Depth is very hard to come by. Like 14 guys had to start last year for Cleveland, and that included like a year where you started out with Bieber and Savali and Plesac and Quantrill and McKenzie. Well, they were supposed to start with McKenzie, and they went to Hunter Gaddis. Yes, every one of them, or they were ineffective. So just saying like, oh well, it's just Cal Quantrill or it's just Shane Bieber, like, and even not having Quantrill, like Shane Bieber's missed 2 of the last 3 years. Like, this team. Yeah, this team, I mean, they have good pitching prospects. They have good pitching. It's just they don't have a lot of safe track record of reliability at this moment. Like,
I don't think anyone does.
The most durable guy they probably have is Bybee, because Allen's undersized. Gavin Williams has an injury history, and
when they had him off some draft boards because of his back.
Right, and then you have Bieber and McKenzie. Like right now, Tanner Bybee is your best bet in terms of
which is why Bybee was our number one prospect. Was like we talked about, his ceiling wasn't as high as an Espino, or even maybe Williams. He thought it was a similar ceiling, but it's like the health he blew the other two out of the water on, which is always part of the calculus for him. But I mean, honestly, the healthiest starter they have right now, because he's not gone yet, is Cal Quantrill. That's their healthiest starter, and he'll be gone.
And Cantillo and Morris that are depth for you. Like, they have injury histories very recently, and then you got Espino, who probably isn't going to help you this year, or if he does, it won't be till the second half. He also has an injury history, so it's like everybody on this roster has that issue.
Like, it's, I mean, the pitching help is more relievers than starters. If you look at it, it's like it's probably Walters and Almon are the guys we talked about, and I guess Cade Smith. We'll discuss him, I think, in segment 3. But it's like we're talking about relievers. They do not have starter depth. And I think this is, a long way of us saying, I think this is a clear sign to change. Like, I've gotten so many DMs from like other hosts in the network about what about a trade for Bieber, or would you come on and talk about a trade for Bieber? Now my response is like, there's no point. I don't think they are trading him. And it makes sense. This would be selling at a relative low point of value. And we have seen them in the past, like they will sit there and run a guy out and hope for a rebound rather than sell low. That's what they did with Oscar Gonzalez a year ago. You can go back to Kelly Shopik after he had his great year and they ran him out. Like, they will see if someone can repeat greatness to increase value rather than sell at a low point. And after missing Corey Kluber was a weird situation because he was going to be a free agent. Like that was a
Shane Bieber. So Shane Bieber.
But they also had depth, which they don't have. Right.
Did they?
Now. Yeah. I mean, think about what they had then. You had
Plesac and Bieber, and you had Carrasco
and Savali,
and you had Clevenger.
And but you had 5. I don't think we can put together 5 if you take care of Bieber. I mean, who's the 5th starter? Cody Morris. If we pull Bieber, who's been hurt for half the year, the last 2 years, they just don't have that. They don't have a set. There is no one after that big 5. Cantillo didn't pitch in the big leagues yet. Morris looked very different than the guy from 2 years ago. They don't have anyone. Like that's just the weird situation is their depth is so bad. I don't see a pathway to trading Bieber right now.
I do agree with you. I'm not saying I think it's very hard and unlikely to trade Bieber at this juncture, given what you just did. We have to see the rest of the offseason develop first before because things could change. I mean, they could trade for a pitcher. They could try to move around some of the
Tobias Myers is available.
I'm just going to ignore that. Move on. But my point was there is precedent for it. Corey Kluber. Okay, so Corey Kluber came off of a line drive off his pitching arm. It was not a pitching related. It was a fluke injury. It wasn't pitching injury related like Bieber has had. He didn't miss 2 of the last 3 years. So I do see that point there. But he's a year away from free agency. And to your point about how the Guardians always extract value, we both thought they would look to trade Aaron Savali after Bieber got hurt when it was clear this team was not going to contend, and you could save your 1 game out of the AL Central, JV relegation league thing. You could save all those comments, but
they were terrible. Like, this was a bad team a year ago. You don't finish in the bottom 10 unless you're a bad team.
But the point is, they only traded Aaron Savali because there was value to be had, because they were offered Kyle Manzardo. Same thing with Corey Kluber. They got Emmanuel Clase they thought could be a big piece. I know everybody laughed at that time.
People hated that deal. I hated that deal.
If there was a deal on the table for Shane Bieber, they can't pass up. If they say, this is good value for Shane Bieber right now, it might be better than what we get either next season or in the comp pick if we give them the qualifying offer, I still think they take it. I don't know. I'm not saying the deal exists. I'm just saying if it came up and they're looking at their pitching depth and their board, but the trade for Bieber is too good to give up right now based on what could happen in the future, I wouldn't be surprised they do it. It's a matter of what else they do this offseason. But I could see them because they didn't have any depth when they traded Savali. Let's be honest. Their pitching, they had to require the corpse of Noah Syndergaard to make up for loss of pitching depth to cover their losses. So they didn't have depth when they traded Savali.
They did have depth because that was the return of Quantrill from his injury. They still had 5 because at that time
he got hurt again.
He did
got hurt again.
But at that time we were talking they would have to demote one of the young players, and then they got Syndergaard. We thought was maybe because they were going to have to stop one of the young guys, and then they ended up not basically doing that. But at the time they actually did have depth. Here is a situation to me where they have no depth at all. They don't have any internal option who's proven. I kind of blew off the whole thing about Vogt going to speak with Bieber. I think all signs point to he is not being traded. Like I think this is a situation too with a rookie coach where they don't want to put him behind the 8 ball. And I think there is extra value in setting the guy you believe in with a better chance to be successful. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think unless they get absolutely. The thing is, they'll trade anyone if their socks get blown off. And I don't think anyone's going to blow off their socks right now because he's just not been good enough. Like, let's be honest. He was not good enough last year, and 2 of the last 3 years missed with injury. I would be shocked right now if a trade developed because I don't think they'll get enough value. I think there's too many negatives on him, and they have too many needs in terms of that rotation.
It would have to be a trade that helps this team because you're right. They're not going to put Vogt behind the 8 ball. It would have to be a trade that makes this team better in 2024 and not worse. But Daniel Espino, he might make. I don't know if he'll make the Guardians better in 2024. I think Cade Smith has a chance to make him a little bit better in 2024. We will discuss why. Well, Cade Smith and Daniel Espino won't be on an NFL field, but you could still score early. It's not really early in the NFL season anymore. You can score this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So that's a free $150 for you if your team wins on a $5 moneyline bet. So if you think about joining FanDuel, if you haven't done it yet, no better time to get in on the action. Just a fair warning, I don't think this is the week you're going to want to play the Browns in the money line. It's negative 196, and they're giving up 4 points. So I don't know if the money line bet is going to be very fruitful on the Browns this week. You could do it. They're favored, which is interesting. It's Steelers. I don't remember too many times in my life where the Guardians. Guardians should always be favored against Steelers. The Browns, not many times in my life, the Browns have been favored by Vegas over the Steelers. But the NFL or the FanDuel app is very easy to use. So if you don't want to bet money line on the Browns, there are spreads, player props, over-unders, more, and you can bet on every game. And you can visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to kick off the NFL season today. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Cleveland doesn't really. I don't know. Do the Guardians really have a rival anymore? What's the Guardians' big rival?
I mean,
is it the Yankees? Is it the
no? Like it used to be Detroit. Maybe it's going to be Detroit again, as they seem to be kind of upswinging.
I think the Twins. Is the Twins right now? I can't take the White Sox serious. I know for a while the White Sox were, but
I mean the White Sox and Twins hate each other more. Like it's that situation where I think most Twins fans would rather see Cleveland be successful than the White Sox. So
we need to bring back some creative MLB rivalries. I mean, I would be all for a home and home series. I know that we play a home and home with the Reds, but I would be all for a home and home with the Pirates, just so I can get a chance to go to PNC Park once a year. I love the Steelers. I love the Pirates Stadium. It's one of the best in baseball. I would love an excuse to go out there. We need to create some.
I've not been there.
Rivalries. Yeah, it's somewhere you should go, and the concourse is a little narrow, and when it gets, luckily the team hasn't been very good, so it's been empty there. But I did go when they were good with like McCutchen and Garrett Cole and all them, and it's hard to walk in their concourse when they're good and there's a lot of people, but it's the same way in Cleveland. So I don't think either of us think Daniel Espino's coming back until May, June at the best. Like that seems like the best case scenario right now. They're going to be super conservative with him. Like if we see him in May, I would be pretty. I'd say it's pretty good. Like I'm not going to say I'd be surprised. I'm just saying that'd be good based on where he's at. So there's still a chance that Espino could help him in 2024. The Cade Smith thing, I'm really happy to see though, because first of all, you only had Tim Herron last year to ride the I-71 shuttle. Like you didn't have any real relief depth. Like that's why they had to keep bringing up Daniel Norris and Touki Tucson and all kinds of goofy things they had to do last year to create some depth in the bullpen. So now you've got Tim Herron who can ride that I-71 shuttle. Now you got Cade Smith. That's valuable. And I think Smith can help the bullpen. This bullpen's going to need some fresh blood. Maybe they'll still look to move De Los Santos. Maybe they'll find a taker for James Karinchak. I don't know. We'll see. But the bullpen needs new blood. And I like Smith, and I also like the story. I mean, this is a guy who was an undrafted free agent in 2020 because of the shortened draft. Probably gets drafted in a longer draft. I mean, as we know, 2020 was a 5-round draft. So great story for Smith, though, to go from undrafted in 2020 to being on the 40-man roster. So we dropped Jeff here. So there we go. He's coming back. So I don't think people realize, too, when you put when you are an undrafted free agent, when you go on the 40-man roster, the money completely changes. So not only is Smith in AAA now on the 40-man roster, that's life-changing for a guy who is an undrafted free agent. That is life-changing money, not a bonus baby, an undrafted guy.
$20,000 bonus, right? That was the max that year.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel Espino, I heard today, I couldn't remember what he got, but I heard he got like $3 million, 2.5, $3 million.
Something like that. I just know that Cade Smith would have been $20,000 from that 2020 draft class. Also heard earlier too that when you get a bonus in the first round, you don't get all the money up front. Like it takes some time for you to get that money. Like you don't just sign and then the check clears another week later for $2 million. Like I guess there are like contingencies on that. Like you have to play a certain amount of years in the system or in Major League Baseball to collect that bonus. So that money is owed to you at some point, but I guess it takes time to get there. So Espino was kind of a bonus baby with some of those guys who bomb out real quick.
Yeah, but good for Smith. Great story for him, and I'm happy for him.
And like you said, we need the depth with the starters, and he was pretty clearly their number 3 relief choice for next year with this team. So it was smart. Listen, you and I were always saying that Cade Smith and Daniel Espino were the must-adds. We had some debate if they'd agree with Smith, and then Jonathan Rodriguez. And I think after that, most of us agree, and we'll have more time to talk about this later. Like Diane Frias is probably the most interesting guy left. We can also talk about guys like Wilfredo Antunez, Jose Devers, Ethan Hankins,
tomorrow,
Aaron Bracho tomorrow. We'll also talk about the Padres because that situation's about to get real weird with their passing of their owner. That's going to I mean, it's going to get different. They were one of the 3 teams that was penalized this past year for overspending, and that's not going to happen now.
A lot of teams are going to batten down the hatches money-wise with this TV thing. So real quickly before we get out of here, based on money. So right now, after 2024, Bally's is supposedly dropping MLB altogether. So after 2024, there will be no teams on Bally the way it's looking right now. Cleveland doesn't know their situation for 2024. There's a lot of teams that don't know their situation. So a lot of teams are going to go. I mean, this is a weak free agent class anyway, but a lot of teams are going to this offseason probably not spending. And of course, Cleveland will be one of them. So time to get creative in trades, Jeff. We've got a lot of offseason episodes we want to talk about how Cleveland can get creative in trades with 29 other teams. Are we going to discuss the AL Central too?
I mean, we can try. We'll can
talk
try
about
more
a trade
than
Cleveland can make with every team.
Yeah, we'll try more than the White Sox front office did last year. Want to thank you all for joining us, rating and reviewing.
Bye, Jerry.
Downloading it helps. I just rewatched The Last Dance, and Reinsdorf, worst owner in baseball, not named John Fisher. I think that's pretty much easy to do. But thank you all for joining us. We will have even more on this as we closer to the Rule 5 and all things this offseason. So make sure you're tuning in every day, and go Guardians, go.